Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, with my Week 7 2015 NFL predictions. Well, this week, I'm kind of having a little bit more of a down week than I did last week. Right now, I am 8-5 for the week, and now overall that gets me up to a record of 58-32, which equals about still 64%. So I really didn't move the needle. And still, 8 wins, 5 losses. It's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not great. It's not a 12-2, 13-1, 11-3 type week, or a 10-win week. I always like to try to hit double digits each week with my wins. But again, I'll take it and I'll try to keep rolling. If I get 9 wins, hey, another 4 games added. Above 500. Still haven't had a losing week all year, and I'll take that with a smile. What a great Week 6 in the NFL. Just like every week in the NFL, you have so many close games. We had another 2 overtime games that were played, coming down to, thrilling finishes. Bears, Lions, what a shootout that was. Congratulations to the Lions for getting their first victory of the year. Even though I do think there was some controversy in the game, but especially with that Golden Tate touchdown call. And I'll get to that later when I talk about the Lions game. And then, you also look at congrats to the Broncos for staying 6-0. Even though they had to play a nail-biter against the Browns, who, are really competitive this year, especially with Josh McCown at quarterback. I'm incredibly surprised that they have been that competitive with him at quarterback. Even though, again, he did throw a horrible interception that I think cost them the game. They were driving down the field. There was no reason. It was kind of Brian Hoyer-esque last week, where McCown just chucked it up in the air, and David Broom just kind of had to just sit under and get the ball. But again, that game, and Peyton Manning, boy, are we seeing such a decline in performance by Peyton Manning. This is an interesting stat I found out. Over the last 16 games, he has thrown 25 touchdowns to 23 interceptions, and he's been sacked 22 times. And I think I heard this on Mike and Mike. The last 16 games before the 16-game stretch, he had thrown 48 touchdowns, had 10 interceptions, and was sacked 14 times. So again, there is age involved, and definitely offensive line, and a struggling running game. Even though Ronnie Hillman did have over 100 yards yesterday, which is quite impressive for him. But I do believe that the Broncos do have a interesting 6-0 run, which is incredibly supported by their defense. But hey, when you're 6-0, you're 6-0. Be very happy that you're at that point, because you can have a nice, comfortable lead, especially with that division. They're still probably going to win that division, even with all of their offensive struggles. And also kudos to the Patriots, the Packers, the Bengals, and the Panthers. Especially big kudos to the Panthers, because what they did for me was they put the nail in the Legion of Boom Seattle dominance coffin. They are not going to be that team, at least for this year, that they've been like the last 2 years. And kudos for Cam Newton finally getting his first win in Seattle, and only the 3rd loss in the Russell Wilson home era. And also they tripled their point value. They scored 27, and they come into the game averaging a total of 9 points. So in the 3 regular season games. So kudos to that team. I think they legitimized their undefeated run, and it made me realize to say, hey, let's give the Panthers more credit than me and a lot of other people had. Even though kudos to a few of our prognosticators, I'm going to share them out here. Kudos to Master Chief Hill and JustMyPicks.com. If you go on our NFL YouTube prognosticators page, which I put on our link, check his picks out. He's very good. He does a very unique format where he does each game individually for a few minutes. I like it. It's different. But check him out. Gio knows. And Mr. Poetic, they all picked the Panthers. Kudos to them. They were out there, with that gut instinct, and they went against the grain of most prognosticators. And shout out to them for getting that right. And check out all their channels because they are great prognosticators, just like myself. But I do think that ended the Legion of Boom's dominance. All right, buys this week. The Chicago Bears, Cincinnati Bengals, Denver Broncos, and Green Bay Packers all have buys this week. So if you have anybody like Cutler, Forte, Jeffrey, Stafford, Johnson, Reddick, Manning, the Broncos defense, Thomas, Rodgers, Jones, any of those guys, bench them because those 4 teams are on their bye this week. That means they are not playing. And I have to do some benching myself because I have James Jones and Forte. So I'm going to take my own advice here. All right, time for my picks for Week 7. This Thursday, when the 2-4 Seattle Seahawks go to the 2-4 San Francisco 49ers, I'm going to take the Seattle Seahawks. And on Sunday, when the 3-3 Buffalo Bills go to the 1-5 Jacksonville Jaguars in London at Wembley Stadium, I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills. When the 4-2 Pittsburgh Steelers go to the 1-5 Kansas City Chiefs, I'm going to take the Pittsburgh Steelers. When the 2-4 Houston Texans go to the 2-3 Miami Dolphins, I'm going to take the Houston Texans. When the 5-1 Atlanta Falcons go to the 1-4 Tennessee Titans, I'm going to take the Atlanta Falcons. When the 2-4 Cleveland Browns go to the 2-3 St. Louis Rams, I'm going to take the St. Louis Rams. When the 2-4, when the 2-3 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, give me 1 second, guys. That's right. Sorry. When the 2-3 Tampa Bay Buccaneers go to the 2-4 Washington Redskins, I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. When the 3-2 Minnesota Vikings go to the 1-5 Detroit Lions, I'm going to take the Minnesota Vikings. When the 2-4 New Orleans Saints go to the 3-3 Indianapolis Colts, I'm going to take the Indianapolis Colts. When the 4-1 New York Jets go to the 5-0 New England Patriots, I'm going to take the New England Patriots. When the 2-3 Oakland Raiders go to the 2-4 San Diego Chargers, I'm going to take the San Diego Chargers. When the 2-3 Dallas Cowboys go to the 3-2, or 4-2, or 3-3 New York Giants, I'm going to take the New York Giants. And on Sunday night, when the 3-3 or 2-4 Philadelphia Eagles go to the 5-0 Carolina Panthers, I'm going to take the Carolina Panthers. And then on Monday night, when the 1-5 Baltimore Ravens go to the 4-2 Arizona Cardinals, I'm going to take the Arizona Cardinals. Alright, time for my thoughts on each game. Seattle at San Francisco, this is quite a awkward game. Because just in 2013, this was the NFC title game. And to look at this game now and say, this is a matchup between 2-4 teams, it's quite unbelievable that in the span of 2 years, we could be in a state where these two teams are just fighting to keep any kind of playoff hope alive. I look at this game, Seattle, they've had a lead in all 6 games in the fourth quarter. They've blown four of those, including the one in Seattle yesterday against Carolina. Russell Wilson has been the most sacked quarterback in the entire league. And definitely the San Francisco defense, they still have some hogs on them. With Brooks, who had about 13 tackles. They have Navarro Bowman. And they have a lot of, fight. And they gained some confidence by beating a struggling Raven team 25-20. And again, this is kind of a hard game to look at because, again, both running games aren't really, have been very effective. Marshawn Lynch came back, but I think he only had about 48 yards. And he's definitely not getting the kind of run that you would want. Kudos, though, to Jimmy Graham for having that big, coming out game. Finally a game that Jimmy Graham can have. About 8 receptions, 140 yards. That's a game Jimmy Graham can have. And, I look at these two quarterbacks. Kaepernick had a solid game, 320 yards, 2 TDs. Each put 2 nice games together. And I know San Francisco, they are, they've won 2 of their 3 home games. They're 2-1 at home, and Seattle's winless on the road. But I've always looked at, Colin Kaepernick against this defense. And that defense is, back intact. And I just can't see him performing well. He's never really performed well, even in his wins. I think he only has one win his entire career against the Seahawks. And the last time in Thanksgiving last year, I think he only threw for about 80 yards and had 2 interceptions. So, that's why I look at this game. I think Seattle's defense just against Kaepernick is just going to provide a bit more of a struggle than Wilson will against the Niners defense. Again, could the Niners win this game? They could. With both these teams, Seattle could blow another fourth quarter lead, and they could, have issues with that. And again, it should be a competitive game because these two teams, have shown some sparks and, a lot of infutility. But again, when I look at this game, it just comes down to me that Seattle's defense is going to give Kaepernick more struggles because it always has compared to Russell Wilson going against the Niners defense. Even though, again, I do expect, the Niners to put up some offensive points because they have far better wide receivers than Seattle does. Doug Baldwin and Curse have basically been afterthoughts to me this year. They really haven't made that much of an impact that you would like them to have. Again, it should be a good game, and I'm going to take the Seahawks in this one just because I look at the secondaries and say Kaepernick is going to have more struggles like he always does against the Legion of Boom than Russell will against this Niners defense, which has shown that at times it can get torched. But it should be a good game, though. But again, I'm going to take the Seahawks to beat the Niners. Buffalo at Jacksonville in the UK. Jacksonville, they're just kind of this awkward team that, like, you see them competing, but then Blake Bortles just, he's showing that he's still having a lot of room to grow. He throws 2, bad picks. One for a pick six that basically iced the game. Yeldon didn't play. I think Hearns was very limited. I think their leading receiver was it wasn't Thomas. Even though Julius Thomas did have a nice 29-yard TD reception. Kudos for him finally showing up and making a big play. And then Buffalo, of course, they're dealing with a lot of ups and downs. Their offense, E.J. Manuel had a nice drive to begin with, but then after that, he kind of had his ups and downs. And then Sammy Watkins went down again. And, of course, this comes on top of his comments about saying he wanted the ball more. And I know this was a couple weeks ago. Somebody mentioned that was a couple weeks ago. But I think a lot of people do not want to hear comments coming out of him at any time because the biggest problem that he has is that he can't stay healthy. He literally, sat down and caught a great bomb by Manuel, but then, he he sprained his ankle and he was out for the rest of the game. So, but I still look at this Buffalo team. LaShawn kind of had a nice game. He had 90 yards and a touchdown. And I'm going to take the Bills to win just because Jacksonville just doesn't have enough talent, especially with, their, defensive line, or we're going up against this Buffalo Bill defensive line, which has been very disappointing in my opinion. I hope Kyle Williams gets better. I know he went down with an injury. But I just believe that the Bills' defensive line will be able to get through this, Jacksonville offensive line. They're going to have Shady there. Carlos Williams will be out for another extended amount of games. I think for another 6 or 7 games, he will be out because of that concussion he suffered. But I don't think that'll matter. Percy Harvin went down with a hip injury, so that's, another injury kind of, issue for Harvin. He's had that in his career. But I look at Buffalo and say that they just have too much talent, even with Tyrod plays or not. I think EJ has enough talent around him to get this kind of win. And also, Buffalo has beaten, besides Indy, who, are 3-3, they've beaten the bad teams. They've beaten the one-win the one-win Dolphin team with Philbin, and they beat the one-win Titans, and now they're going to beat the one-win Jaguars. So these are teams that Buffalo tends to beat. When you put them up against the better team, they usually lose those games. So, and again, Jacksonville also just has been blown out at home, or blown out in London. They, I think, have another 2 years on this 4-year deal they have, and they got absolutely destroyed by the Cowboys last year, and then the Niners the year before that. They just never play well in London. So I'm just going to use that to say that the Bills are just going to continue to beat the bad teams. And, yes, that's what I'm going to take the Bills to beat the Jaguars. Pittsburgh over Kansas City. Kansas City, they showed that they could not get an offense. They got 2 picks on Bridgewater, both in the red zone, by the way. Or one was in the red zone. The other one might have been in the red zone, but I know they got 2 picks on him. But they still could score a grand total of 10 points against this Vikings team, given that 2 interception handicap. They really couldn't run the ball well enough. They got the Vikings got 2 huge stops on 4th down, and it's just frustrating. I think Kansas City is kind of like, it's a huge disappointment because again they don't have their core of their offense, and that's starting to struggle. And even though Kansas City's at home, and that's a tough place to play, Jay Cutler with his weapons was able to go in there, and now you have this Pittsburgh team who's on a really good high, especially when they beat the Arizona Cardinals 25-13, with Landry Jones, the former Oklahoma quarterback, their 3rd-string quarterback, going 8 of 12 for 160 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Martavius Bryant having, a monster game to show that he is a legitimate number 2 wide receiver for this team. And especially at one point where he outran the entire Cardinal defense to no-fly zone. It was incredibly impressive. So, when I look at that, I also believe that Landry should be the quarterback next week, even if Michael Vick can stay, be healthy, even though Michael Vick did have some dirt in his eye from his helmet that caused him to get out of the game, and then he pulled his hamstring. Just because I think that Landry showed more of a consistency with the offense than Michael Vick had. It's kind of sad because there are people that want Michael Vick to succeed. There are people that don't want him to succeed. But I do want Michael Vick to do well. I've been a fan. I've been a supporter of his since he's come back. He's done a great job of his life. But I do kind of agree with what Deion Sanders says, and that I don't think we're going to see Michael Vick in another start ever again, because I think he's 35. You can sign him as a backup. I'd be okay with that, but I don't think any team would say, hey, let's give a 35-year-old Michael Vick with his injury history and his maybe lack of production a chance to start. It's sad because, again, he's had, really big highs, ultimate lows, and he's really made himself into a great story for, redemption. But I do think that was the last time you will see Michael Vick on an NFL field. But with that being said, the reason why I'm going to take Pittsburgh is Kansas City has the worst pass defense in the entire National Football League. So, if Landry Jones can, get some first-team reps and get some time, he has way too much talent around him to, not beat up this Kansas City defense. If Jay Cutler could do it with Cameron Meredith and Marquise Wilson, I think Landry Jones could do it with Bryan and Brown easily, and they could put on a field day for Pittsburgh. They also won't have that much of a running game. Pittsburgh's run defense did a really good job. Their secondary, they got 2 picks off Palmer, and they only gave Palmer his, I think, 4th or 5th loss in his last 20 games, and he's only his 7th loss as an Arizona Cardinal. So that's incredibly impressive. And I just think that Pittsburgh, they just have a good momentum, and this is a Kansas City team that's reeling. They really doesn't have much offensive firepower to speak of. And I even thought if Michael Vick played, they would have won this game. Just because they just have way too many offensive weapons that the Chiefs don't have to win this game. Again, it should be a competitive game. I think Kansas City, they have it, they've shown that they can be competitive. Their defense can, maybe get through that offensive line. Kelvin Beachum, their big left tackle, tore his ACL for the year. Very unfortunate. So now they've lost their center, Pouncey, and Beachum, for the year. And I think that, that could cause some trouble, especially for Landry in his first start. But I still think he has way too many weapons and just enough familiarity with the Pittsburgh offense that he can win this game. with this team. So that's what I'm going to take Pittsburgh to beat Kansas City. Houston at Miami. This was awkward because I have to give a huge kudos to Dan Campbell for pushing all the right buttons for the Miami Dolphins to win this game. They blew out the Titans 38-10. I did not expect that at all. They had 6 sacks in the game, which was 6 times as many, or 5 times as many as they had the entire year up to that point. They ran for 111 yards, which I think they hadn't run for like 70 yards going into that game. And Tannehill had a 200. He had a decent game, even though he did throw 2 horrible interceptions that I can't believe the Titans can capitalize on. But I have to give Dan Campbell a lot of credit for motivating that team and looking a lot more physical, looking a lot more aggressive, looking a lot more fired up than I had ever seen under Joe Philbin. I'll just admit that right now. Dan Campbell, for a first impression, he did a great job. But I'm not going to be a prisoner of the moment, and maybe but maybe some people are going to do, and say Miami should beat this, Brian Hoyer-led Texan team. Because Brian Hoyer, for his sake, had a solid game. He threw for 296 yards and, 3 touchdowns against the Jaguars. Tannehill against the Jaguars lost. So, but I look at this team and I look at this game and say, it all comes down to me based on talent. I think that even though Tannehill is a better quarterback than Brian Hoyer, and I'll admit that to everybody, and that's a fair statement. Houston with DeAndre Hopkins, who is becoming a very maybe underappreciated wide receiver. I think he's, especially for this year, maybe not overall around. I think he's, in that top 10, maybe even top 5 conversation. 4 straight 100-yard games, 166 yards again with 2 touchdowns. This guy is a monster, and he's been an incredible find. And he's definitely, in his contract year, earning a nice big-time contract, which I would give him. But I think that with that, and the other guys they have, Cecil Shorts had a nice game. And also you have, Arian Foster. I'd take him over Lamar Miller. And I think the Houston defense, they've shown some flashes, and they're playing a Miami offensive line that's, for the most part this year, have not been good. And I think that if those guys, Clowney, who did not play, if Watt and Cushing and those guys can get to Tannehill, I think that they can, beat him up more than the Dolphins defense can beat up Hoyer. Again, it's going to be a really competitive game because you got 2 win teams that are kind of not having any expectation. This is just basically a confidence win. But when I look at Houston and Miami, I just have to go with talent. I think Houston's defense has way more talent around them than what Tennessee had, and they have just a better ability to run the ball and protect the quarterback against this Dolphins defense than that Titans offensive line did. Again, it should be a really competitive game, and I might regret not taking Miami just because I might go Tannehill was the better quarterback than Hoyer, and Hoyer showed up. But I'm going to take Houston just because just more talent around them. They have better receivers, and I think they have a better offensive line, which will be the difference in this game. And Hoyer will not get as beat up as Tannehill will. That's what I'm thinking. Am I going to be right about it? I'm not sure. But that's why I'm going to take the Texans to beat the Dolphins. Atlanta over Tennessee. Atlanta laid an egg. New Orleans was just fired up from the start. After that great first drive that they had, the next Atlanta goes 3-and-out. They try to go for a punt, and McNulty of the Saints, I think his name is Mike McNulty, blocks the punt, and he gets into the end zone for a touchdown. Very Steve Gleason-esque, who, by the way, was at the game, which I thought was pretty cool if they saw that play. And I look at that and go, Atlanta, are they a bit fraudulent? You could say, you could have your points again. They had 4 fourth-quarter comebacks, in their 5-game streak, which was quite, incredible to me. You could say that was just, pure ineptitude by those other teams. Because, again, up to this point, they've only played one winning team, which are the Giants, and they had to come back from 10 down to beat them. But I think that's credit, because if you keep doing it, that's showing that you can fight adversity. If they had lost all those games and they'd be 1-5, you could say, well, Dan Quinn's been, a horrible coach. But again, that's, those close wins define a team. And again, Devontae Freeman's been a monster. He has been definitely a huge surprise by a lot of people's standards. He has the most rushing touchdowns in the entire league, which is quite unbelievable to me. But I look at this game and say Tennessee's egg just gave me all the reason to pick Atlanta. I think Dan Quinn, with this loss, he'll motivate this team. And even if Atlanta, continues to struggle with ball security, because he did have 3 turnovers, I don't believe the Titans' offense will be able to capitalize on those turnovers. They had 2 picks on Tannehill, and they couldn't do anything. And actually, one ended up going back the other way by Mariota throwing an awkward pick 6. Again, does Atlanta have the talent that Miami has on the defensive line? No. But do they have enough, guys on there to, cause some distress? Yeah, they do. And I just also think with their secondary, I don't think their secondary can match up with Julio or Roddy. They let Lamar Miller run for 100 yards. So let's take the, one of the big surprises of Devontae Freeman and, mix in some Telvin Coleman, and let's have them two run through the, Tennessee defense. So, again, this game, I'm not really expecting that much out of Tennessee. They really let me down in the game against Miami, so you could say I'm just kind of picking on this fight. But Atlanta should be able to beat this Titans team. Just, I know I said, Atlanta should be able to go on the road and beat New Orleans. Well, again, that was Drew Brees in the Dome with a motivated Saint team. This Titans team really has no expectation, and I don't think Marcus Mariota, with his weapons, can do what Drew Brees can do. Not many quarterbacks can. So, again, it should be an interesting game, but I think Atlanta should easily be able to get this one pretty easily. And that's one of my locks of the week. Actually, my 3 locks for the week. I'm going to take Atlanta as a lock over Tennessee. I'm going to take the Chargers as a lock over the Raiders. And I'll take the Patriots. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'll take the Cardinals over the Ravens as my other lock for the week. My 3 locks of the week. But that's what I'm taking the Falcons to beat the Titans. Cleveland and St. Louis. Ugh. Oh, Lord. This is tough. Because this game is about even to me. Cleveland, again, their defense caused 3 interceptions by Peyton Manning. Incredibly impressive, or maybe just another sign of how bad Peyton Manning is playing this year. Who, by the way, has 7 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. Unbelievable for Peyton Manning-led team. Since his rookie year, he hasn't had this many struggles. But, I look at this game, and I'm going to take the Rams, basically just for, I guess, one main reason. They're home. Yeah, and I know you can say, well, St. Louis lost to Pittsburgh at home. Well, you look at how good Pittsburgh's been this year. And, I guess, yeah, that's why. McCown's shown that he's had some. And I just thought of another reason. I think Todd Gurley, what he's been able to do the last 2 games, has been incredibly impressive, and I'm really seeing that why the Rams took a top 10 pick on him. Because he ran for about 135 yards against the Packers that week, and if Nick Foles doesn't throw all those interceptions, I think the Rams could have won that game. And also, Greg Zuerlein missed 2 field goals. But when you look at this game, so I'm going to take the running game. Duke Johnson and Crowell had about 20 carries for, had about 70 yards combined on the ground. And you can say, well, it's Denver's defense, and they're one of the best defense in the league. I get that, yeah. But I think Todd Gurley could have ran. Todd Gurley would make more of an impact against that, Broncos defense than those 2 guys would. But again, this game, it's a total pick-em. Because the quarterbacks, you've seen some really good games from either quarterback, And you've seen some really bad games by both quarterbacks. The receivers, about even. Kenny Britt went down. Hopefully he can come back this week. You got two tight ends, Cook and Barnidge. Who, by the way, Gary Barnidge is the first Browns tight end with four touchdowns in 3 or 4 games since Ozzie Newsome did it in 1981. So there's a little unique stat there. And also, I think Gary Barnidge had caught 3 touchdowns in 8 years. He's caught 4 touchdowns in 3 games for the Browns this year. Unbelievable. But again, I'm going to take St. Louis. Would I be surprised if Cleveland wins? No, I wouldn't be. They have enough firepower like St. Louis. Again, 2 main reasons. Todd Gurley has been a stud, and they'll be able to run through this Cleveland defensive line. And I'll take the home team. I know it's kind of a weak analysis, but really these two teams are about even. So if anybody gets angry, it's like, oh, you didn't really put a lot into it. But well, look at these two teams. That's how I feel about it. There's really not that much difference. That's going to take St. Louis to beat Cleveland. Tampa at Washington. I think if this one to me was just because of talent and rest. Again, because this is about another type of even game where the difference of the game to me is going to be, can the Redskins get healthy because they didn't have Trent Williams at left tackle, or Deshaun Jackson for another game. And this has been incredibly disappointing to see him not have that kind of impact at all for this year. But I look at Tampa and Washington, and I literally have to say this. This game is going to be the battle of who can turn over the ball less. The quarterback that turns over the ball less will win this game. For Jay Gruden's sake, if this team loses again, I might consider starting Colt McCoy because you're just seeing Kirk throw more and more interceptions, and they're getting more boneheaded and boneheaded as the weeks go on. There was one in the game yesterday against the Jets where he literally threw it in double coverage, and he was trying to throw it to Jamison Crowder behind screen and Cromartie. That's not even a smart thing, in double coverage. Kudos to the Redskins special team for getting a touchdown in the end zone with the blocked punt, to save some garbage time. But yeah, I literally look at this game and say, the running games have been about even. Matt Jones didn't play last week, but he gave me Jones and Morris or Sims and Martin. That's about even. Jackson, Evans, Garcon, and Jackson. Again, about even. Both tight ends have been hurt, and they're probably going to both be out again. So again, you look at this team, and then you have the secondaries. I'm just going to take Tampa just because also not only with confidence, they're rested. They went to Washington, and they also have a little bit of history. They went to Washington last year with Josh McCown and beat this Redskin team that, with Robert and Kirk, as the weeks go on, you can say they really are about the same guy. And Tampa, really didn't add, they had Winston. And could Winston screw up? He could. He threw about 7 interceptions this year so far, so he's turned over the ball quite a bit. But with Washington's lack of secondary and also just their own quarterback, I think that cancels out. So to me, it's kind of like Cleveland St. Louis. It's about an even game, but I just think that Tampa's rest and more talent available are going to be the difference in this game. For Tampa to win their second straight game and to give Jameis his third win. Again, hey, 3-4, through 7, or 3-3 through 7 weeks for Tampa. That's actually okay. Again, you could say they hadn't beaten anybody great. I'll give you that. But hey, 3 wins are 3 wins. At this time last year, they had probably about, I think, 1 win. So, they're already at a better pace than they were last year. And they already had more wins than they did the entire last year. So, at least they're moving forward. So that's I'm going to take Tampa to beat Washington. Minnesota over Detroit. And let me talk about this Lions-Bears thing. Okay, I believe that the Bears got robbed of that interception in the end zone. Okay, and before anybody says, "Oh, you're just being angry because you didn't get your pick right." Hey, look, I'm going to give the Lions this. The Lions got screwed in Seattle. So the biggest reason why I'm okay with this whole thing is because in some ways, I think it's kind of payback for what happened in Seattle for them. So kudos, to the Lions for getting their win, and and the Lions had their chance, and the Bears had their chances in overtime. The overtime rule actually worked. You can't complain. But it just to me and I heard Dean Blandino, the referee, say, "Well, this isn't about the other plays because the other guys aren't falling down or diving. Golden Tate wasn't falling down when he caught the ball." To me, that's kind of awkward because that basically just said to the NFL, "Hey, look, if you fall or dive for catches, don't do it because you know what? Don't drop it, or you're going to have that catch rule be applied to you. If you stand, that's fine." I think that's a little bogus, but that's just me because it's that he didn't even make a football move. I thought when you had the ball in the end zone, you had to make a football move, and I know he had his 2 feet down in the end zone, but he didn't have it long enough to me to say he made a football move because just as he was turned around, he got popped. And, number 58 caught the ball. And mostly everybody else, including the guy on Fox, that's the former VP of officiating, thought that it was a fumble. So, to me, I think, again, the Bears got robbed on that call. But again, there's always controversial calls that happen every game. But I'm just saying, it's kind of awkward to me that basically the difference in the rule is you don't, if you're diving or falling, that rule is into effect. But Calvin was sitting down, he was falling down. But that to me is awkward. So if you don't fall down, or if you're not diving or falling to the ground in a catch, the rule doesn't apply. But if you are, it does. That's just awkward to me. But again, that's just my thought on it. Kudos to the Detroit Lions for getting their first win. However, I do not expect them to get their second this week against Minnesota. Just because Minnesota, their defense is really good. They were in Minnesota just in week 2, and they won by 10 points, 26-16. Stafford had a horrible game. He threw for about 2 interceptions. And again, Stafford had a couple bad, and he had that horrible running interception. But Jay Cutler had a horrible interception too when he threw it right to Rasheed Mathis. So I think that cancels out. But I just think Minnesota's defense, they're going to give Detroit a lot more struggles than Chicago did. Because they have way more talent around them to make an impact. Can this game be competitive? Absolutely it can. Especially with Calvin Johnson and Stafford showing that, what kind of impact they can have together. Stafford threw for 405 yards, 4 TDs, and a pick. Calvin Johnson had his highest yardage total of the whole year, 166 yards. That's the old Calvin Johnson everybody loves to see. But again, I just think Minnesota, they have a better defense that they can handle this Lions team. Do I think that they're going to get blown out like, Arizona blew out? No. I think this game can be very competitive. I think Detroit can win this game. But I'm going to take the Vikings just because I just have faith in their defense to make enough stops, and also AP to be able to run pretty effectively against his defense, like he did, the last time, just to win this game. And also, just Minnesota, they've just been more effective in all their games than what I've seen Detroit do. So, again, that's why I'm going to take the Vikings to beat the Lions. Colts over Saints. Kudos to New Orleans for getting a huge win over Atlanta. Big confidence booster. But I don't see you going on the road to beat this Colts team. Just because also the Saints are 0 and they lost to Arizona on the road, Carolina on the road, and they lost. Yeah, they're 0 and 3 on the road. And also this is an indie team that they played a heck of a game against the Patriots. And Andrew Luck, he played like Andrew Luck, like we all think he can. 30 of 50, 312 yards, 3 TDs, and no interceptions. The first time that's happened in his career against the Patriots. But, in that game, everybody's talked about, including, I've seen it, the 4th and 3 play where you have cold hand. Basically Chuck Pagano has all the guys go out flank to the right, and you have Griff Whalen as the center, snapping it to Colt Anderson. But the awkward thing is that nobody's there. There were 3 Patriot defenders and 1 Colt defender. So what do you expect to have? And you didn't have to do that on the third in the third quarter on 4th and 3. You know what that reminded me of? It reminded me of what Belichick did back in 2009 when he went for it on 4th and 2 from his own 30. I guess that showed to me how much respect he had for Tom Brady. That Chuck Pagano was scared to not have his defense have to go out against Brady, who by the way had another phenomenal game. 23 of 37, 312 yards, 3 TDs, and a pick, even though that was pretty bogus because Edelman, who by the way had a pretty twisted up finger, and it went to Mike Adams for pick 6. But again, also they've scored 48 or 158 points, which is the most they have in the last 6 games, in the first 6 games in that franchise's history. So when people say that they're, people saying, oh, they're not on an 07 type tear, well, that number right there just proves it. That I think they are. But I look at this Indy team, and I just feel like this Indy team has a lot more confidence in them now, especially Andrew Luck, who's coming off a really good game by his standards, or especially going into that game, what he had played in the other 3 games. And I still don't trust New Orleans defense. I think Indy's offensive line, can they get pressure on through it? Yeah, they could, because Indy's offensive line has shown that it struggled. But I do believe that Indy has just more talent around them that can work. And, again, Indy, there are people, maybe on that roster, or there'll be that motivation of, hey, for this organization, 5 years ago, they cost us, they cost the organization a Super Bowl, so play for, this name and go out there and beat New Orleans. Again, I think it can be a very competitive game. I just think that Indy's talent and home field advantage, where you're playing a Saints road team that doesn't really play that well on the road anyway, should be able to beat this Saints team. Again, it should be a really good game between these 2 squads, and I actually wouldn't be that surprised if New Orleans wins the game. These are only one game difference. But I'm going to take Indianapolis. They're at home. They have some momentum. Luck has more talent around them, and I think he's going to use that as a confidence booster to beat this up and down Saint team. They've shown that they can have some really good flashes of breeze at home, but then on the road can look pretty washed up. So that's what I'm going to take the Colts to beat the Saints. The Patriots over the Jets. This is the first in a stretch of 3 games of the Patriots at home. And they're playing a Jet team that's the number 1 rushing team and the number 1 overall defensive team in yards. I have to give Todd Bowles a lot of credit. This squad has been incredibly impressive through their first 5 games. You can say, who have they beaten? Well, they beat the Colts. Yep. And they beat, a struggling Cleveland team. And they beat, Miami, and they beat Washington. So they really haven't played anybody. Okay, that's fair. But I just have to go with New England just because it's New England. Again, I think this will be the toughest test the Patriots have had to play the entire year because of what defense the Jets have. Because they have one of the best secondaries in the entire league, and they have a good enough defensive front that they can pressure Brady. That combination, enough, can cause this game to be a real nail-biter. Mostly like Jets-Patriot games usually are. I just think, again, the key difference is the Patriots have Brady and the Jets have Ryan Fitzpatrick, who I'm expecting, who I think has only won 1 game in his career against the New England Patriots. I'm expecting Ryan Fitzpatrick to play more like the bad Ryan Fitzpatrick and more not like the good Fitzpatrick that usually can, manage a game. Again, this game should be really competitive because I really want to see how this defense does. Because if the Jets can win this game, you are going to have a competitive race for that division. Because I looked at the Jets' schedule. They, if they can beat Buffalo, in Buffalo, I think that team, pretty much can go, tit for tat with the Patriots. Just with their schedule. I think after this they play Jacksonville and they play Oakland. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what other games do they have. They still get to play the Cowboys. They still get to play the Giants. And they have another game against the Dolphins. So, this Jet team can get 7, maybe 10, 12 wins. So this Jet team, if they can beat the Patriot team in New England, they can compete for the AFC East. But I don't see that happening. This Patriot team is unstoppable at home, basically. And again, it just comes down to me that, even though, again, like I said, the Jets have the number 1 overall defense and number 1 rushing attack, so they have a formula that can, prevent Brady from doing anything, because what's the best way to stop Brady? Him standing on the sideline. I just don't see Ryan Fitzpatrick being able to manage the game well enough to win this game for them. And, so that's what I'm going to take the Jets to lose to the New England Patriots. San Diego over Oakland. Man, I feel so bad for Phillip Rivers. He has put up 2 phenomenal games back-to-back, but just by the jaws of, defeat, lost each of them by a last-second stop or a last-second touchdown. However, they were playing the Packers and the Steelers, so obviously I kind of expected that. So, when I look at San Diego, they're playing an Oakland team that's coming off a bye, who, has been very impressive themselves, and you almost kind of see the same team. The running games have been up there and down there. They've had their highs and lows. Both defenses, are solid. Both defenses have great safeties. Weddle and Woodson kind of cancel each other out. And the corners are good, but they're, not great. So when it comes down to me, is that San Diego just has more weapons around them to work with. Yeah, Floyd, Allen, Gates, Webb, Green. I'm thinking of Ladarius Webb for us. Green, and and also they're at home. So again, another home field kind of advantage. This isn't a better team. These are 2 even teams. So I think San Diego has more offensive talent. Could Oakland stop them? Yeah, they could, but they also lost Justin Tuck for the year with torn pec, so that's disappointing. But I'm going to take San Diego in this game just because they have way too much talent to outdo the Raiders. And I think just of how Carr's played over the last couple of weeks, I think San Diego can get Carr to make one more mistake than Rivers. Then Oakland will be able to get Rivers to make one more mistake to win this game. It should be a very entertaining game against 2 teams that have shown a lot of competitive fight. But I think, again, the Chargers just have more talent to be able to get the victory more than the Raiders can. So that's going to take the Chargers to beat the Raiders. The Giants over the Cowboys. I think, again, the Giants have a lot of injuries they're dealing with. Victor Cruz is out again tonight, who, by the way, I think they should try to trade or release next year. Because I think, him making $8 million a year, or making a possible $8 million a year, that's just way too much for me to say, hey, you deserve to stay after missing your last 16 games. Or, your last 17 games for us. But, again, this is a game at home for the Giants. Dallas, they have Matt Castle now, who I think will give a little bit of a spark to the offense. He's 34-38 as a starter, way better than 5-19 for Brandon Whedon. And they might get Dez back, but it's just hard for me to say, especially with now Lyle Collins replacing Ronald Leary for the left guard position. It's just hard for me to say win or lose for the Giants tonight, that they're going to lose to this Cowboy team. I just think that, again, the Giants have way more weapons, and they have a much better run defense, to which the Cowboys, that's what the Cowboys want to do. Again, could Matt Castle be more effective against, this very weak Giants secondary? He could. But I don't expect it to happen. I think that they're going to try to get him back to running it. and also, I just feel that, again, that Eli, even if he, even if we can get Odell back and Dez can't play, I just think Dallas is not going to look that much different with Castle than Wheaton. They'll look better, but it won't look that much different for me to, swing the pendulum to say the Cowboys are going to beat the Giants in New York, in Castle's first start as a Cowboy. Again, it should be an interesting game because I do want to see how Castle does, but the Giants just have too much talent, still, healthy, that they should be able to still win this game. So that's what I'm going to think the Giants to beat the Cowboys. Carolina over Philadelphia. Let me give the Panthers a tremendous amount of credit. They are legitimate. Because I think a lot of people like me were looking at the Panthers' schedule and looking at how they were playing and looking at how ineffective that the lack of competition and saying, well, again, you beat the 1-win Jags, the 2-win Texans, the 2-win Saints, and the 2-win Bucks. Bravo. You beat 4 teams that are below 500. And again, Seattle was going into the game at 2-3. So you were playing another below 500 team, but you were going into Seattle, a place you had, a team Cam Newton had never beaten, a place that only lost 2 times in the last 3 years, the last 4 years, and you were facing a defense that you would average 9 points a game against. And the fact that Cam Newton was able to lead 4 scoring drives of 80-plus yards, and that last drive, due to that blown coverage by the Legion of Boom, I had to tip my cap to Carolina and say, you are 5-0, and you have earned this 5-0 start. Congratulations. So, with that in mind, I realized, well, if that defense can shut down the Legion of Boom, or, limit them to 23 points, and that offense can, get 27, they're playing the Philadelphia Eagles, on Sunday Night Football. This is a Philadelphia team that, has looked decent the last couple, games. Especially last week against the Saints, where Bradford threw for 300, 2 TDs and 2 picks. Matthews and Murray about equaled out and both had a touchdown. Nelson Aguilar will not go tonight, though, so that's big. So that will elevate Riley Cooper's role into the second slot. Jordan Matthews will still struggle. And also they got Luke Kuechly back, who was a monster. He had 5 solo tackles and 9 assisted tackles in the game. And that definitely shows how much of a leader and how much of a force he is for that Carolina defense. And I just have to go with is that if they can stop Russell Wilson in that offense, and shut them down, they can definitely shut down the Philadelphia Eagles offense. Speed or not. Philadelphia doesn't nearly have the talent, or Bradford's not Wilson. Matthews and Murray can't equal up to Lynch's ability. Again, you can say the offensive line is better. All right, fair enough. That'll be a little bit more of a struggle for the Panthers. But still, they just have way too much defensive firepower. And I'll take Cam right now, who, by the way, I'm going to say this because I do believe he should be number 3 in the. He is the 3rd best quarterback this year right now, I believe. Because I will, and you can say Andy Dalton, because I have Rodgers and Brady at 1 and 2, and then Newton and Dalton are 3 and 4. I'll give Newton that edge just based on the Brady argument of he's had nobody to work with. I challenge any of my viewers out there, besides Greg Olsen, name me any other receiver that Carolina has. Name me any other receiver. If you can, name me 2. Name me 2 other wide receivers the Carolina Panthers have had this year, besides Greg Olsen, who's tight end, that they've had, and I'll give you credit for that. But he's basically got this team on his back to a undefeated record. And I'll take that over the credit over Dalton, who's had Jones and Green and Eifert and Hill and Bernard. So he's had a very talented roster. Even though kudos to Dalton, though, for his 6-0 start. Last time they did that was 1988, when they made the Super Bowl, by the way. So again, sorry about the diatribe. I'm going to take Carolina just because I doubted them and they proved the test, and they're playing a much weaker Philadelphia offense, or a much more inconsistent Philadelphia offense that I just cannot go with against this Carolina team right now, especially with the confidence they have, and they're at home. So with that combination, definitely going to take the Panthers to beat the Eagles. And then lastly, the Cardinals over the Ravens. This was the easiest pick of the week. We are not Pittsburgh. We do not have the offensive talent that they have, and we definitely do not have the defense that they have right now either. I am going to say this for everybody out there. We are the competitive losers this year. I truly believe that. We've lost every one of our games by less than 7 points. So everybody can say, hey, you put up a fight, man. You are competitive. You have played every single team very well. But one common thing that keeps happening is we keep losing. And especially with Bruce Arians' team at home that's motivated and angry with how anemic they looked against the Steelers and Landry Jones, they're going to rip. Talk about angry birds. The Cardinals are going to rip our remaining wasted carcasses and pretty much just, say to us, this is a wasted year. And I am so upset as a Raven fan because I really wanted this to be a good year. I thought we could have a good year. But we've had too many injuries. We do not have the mindset of being able to close games. Our defense is horrid. Our coaching has been inconsistent. Trestman's been a weak offensive coordinator, and it really irritates me because I've wanted Adam Gase from Chicago, but I digress. But I just think Arizona's just way too talented all around for us not to lose this game against the Cardinals. So that's why I'm going to take the Cardinals to beat the Ravens. So that's it. So make sure to like, comment, rate, subscribe. Please check out the NFL YouTube prognosticators page. I want to give a huge shout out to Gio Knows, Mr. Poetic, Billy B, Master Chief Hill, and that justmypicks.com. Check his videos out; they're great. Anthony Greeno and the Breakdown. Anybody out there, that aren't part of the prognosticators, check him out and make sure you subscribe. He's got a good sense of the game, and also, he's also helping all of us prognosticators out by having debates and our records to see how everybody's doing. Half Moon, Nan's Noodles, Edward Lerner, Hatbox, who, by the way, sorry for his Falcons, Billy B. Kudos for audibling there at the end there about that Saint game. Good job with that. And all the other prognosticators out there, best of luck to all you guys this week. And that's it. So good luck to all teams, players, fantasy owners, coaches, and fellow prognosticators. And until next week, this is Matt the Fanatic signing off. Until next week, so long.